never get to experience it on the street level. If there was an opportunity to somehow experience it, I think you've started to talk about it, but I'm not sure you can actually still see through it. It would be great if you to do that, and if it does become a public space, so then go in and see that the beautiful stairs and all those things in there, it would be really wonderful. So those are, I think, and also the building, I think the weakest part of the whole project is the lower 4-story on the Robson and Richards corner. I think each building, the residential tower, the office building, and so on, has a strength of its own, but that particular little wedge seems like you're not quite certain what you want to do. So compared to the size of the project, it's quite fragmented, quite broken, but maybe all it needs is some kind of stronger organization. By maybe moving the entrance to Richard Street will give you the opportunity to look at that whole corner. I think that's, to me, the weakest portion of your whole scheme. And I like your keeping the existing building. I think it adds a lot of flavor and character to the project. But and I'd like to know what they're going to do with that building. Is it just going to stay as is, or are they actually going to renovate? It would be nice if the whole block actually can happen, and like some of the European cities, when you go into a historic building, you actually go out the other side and be on the lane, and then there are, like the main lane in San Francisco, lots of things can happen in it, and those buildings become conduits to connect the city fabric to the lane. I think if those things could be accomplished, it would be fantastic. I think this is a great project. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Just a clarification, Jim, I'm not sure if you're aware that Kingston Hotel is not part of.
I know they're not, but there's a way to work with them,
Okay, thank you.
to encourage them to work together.
Okay, thanks very much. Alan?
Okay, thank you. I'll try not to repeat comments, but first of all, I do want to agree with Jim that I find this an extremely exciting proposal. It's very energetic and ambitious, and I think it just holds a lot of promise to be a really exciting place in the downtown core. I particularly like the overall approach to the form and massing of the overall block, the elemental approach that you've taken, where clearly expressing kind of very rectilinear box-like forms and an assemblage of parts. It really works well in terms of integrating with the existing buildings on the site, and it's developing a rich vocabulary, which I think holds a lot of promise for the architecture, as it is already in the drawings that you're showing today, even at this early stage of a rezoning. I think I also really appreciate the comprehensive approach you're taking to animating and sort of healing all of the street level frontages on all 4 frontages, because you're right in your comment that currently it's deadly along both Richards and Seymour in particular. So that's all looking quite good. In terms of the residential tower, I agree with the comment that the floor plate size it's not an issue of the number, and I think given the height of the building and floor plate size, it gives a proportion to the residential tower that overall I think is successful. So it's not so much I have a concern with the size of the floor plate, but I do have some concern. I think the scale of the residential tower, to me, feels overly aggressive, and to me, it's getting into the territory where it's getting up to 450 feet. It's a tall building site, and to me, this location is for a residential building. It doesn't feel to me like it's a tall building site, and it has a lot to do with, because other residential buildings in the neighborhood to the southeast, to the east, and in the close proximity, they've all conformed to the height restrictions that are imposed by the view quarters. So there's kind of like a descending scale of the buildings towards Yaletown, which in my mind I think should be respected. So notwithstanding, I think it's a logical argument that you're within that view shadow of the Scotia Towers. It just seems to me that it's getting a little bit big. Having said that, I also think that the size of the residential tower is leading to some proximity issues with some of the existing buildings across the lane. For the first, I don't know how many stories it is, but probably first 20 stories, 25 stories of the residential building fronting on the lane, you're getting very close to the existing buildings across the lane, and which you know, so I think it's really pushing the edges. Also, on the topic of the residential tower, I just want to echo Jim's comment about the Robson Street frontage. I think already it's getting a little overly articulated and kind of busy. So I think as the design develops, to ratchet back on that a little bit would be good. The office building, I think I'm quite supportive of the direction that that's going, particularly with the way sustainability and green building is being expressed very readily on the exterior expression. I think again, where I feel things feel just a little bit overly aggressive is with the cantilevers out over Seymour and Richard Street. I just somehow feel, as much as I like them, you know, as much as they're exciting elements and you know, they're kind of cool, but at the same time, I think for a building like this, I think those kind of elements should be reserved, if at all, for any building in the downtown. It should be reserved for major public buildings like art galleries or cultural buildings. For what is essentially a residential and commercial office development, I just fundamentally don't feel that they're warranted. And given the impact that they would have, particularly on the Seymour Street end view, where you know the city has gone to great pains to keep those view corridors to Burrard Inlet open, and I think the Seymour cantilevered portion projecting into that street end view is, to me, it's not warranted. And the other issue I think with the Seymour Street cantilevered portion is there's a real tension that develops with the Scotia Bank or the Scotia Tower across the street, such that, particularly if you use that as a projection surface, it's really only going to be visible except from very oblique angles from the Scotia Tower. So as for the public realm, I've already commented that in general I'm quite supportive of everything that you're proposing. I really like the strategies and the idea of animating the lane and trying to make that more than just a service lane. I have a little bit of skepticism or concern about pulling that off, and it primarily has to do with, given the scale of the buildings, 20 feet apart on either side, it's going to take a lot to really make that a pedestrian-friendly space. And so, as much as I encourage you to explore that notion, there's some skepticism there as well. And finally, I wanted to just make a few comments about the Kingston Hotel. I agree with what you said. I kind of like the way in the model it remains as this kind of anomaly in the overall block, and I think in many ways it creates a very unique situation, and I think you've tried hard to consider how to respect and that existing building. However, I have some big concerns on two fronts there. First of all, It'll be great in the finished version, but through the 3 to 5 years that this is under construction, you know, I feel badly for them because